Vande Gujarat.
Hi, my name is Nisha Mehta and I'm the Functional English Trainer with Scope. I welcome you all to the Speaking Module Part 4. Earlier we had spoken about Part 1, Part 2 and Part 3 in the Speaking Module for Linguaskills. Just to let you know about the Linguaskill examination, Linguaskill is available with two options to the candidates: Linguaskill General and Linguaskill Business. Linguaskill General assesses the ability of the candidate in English language, of the general English that we use in our daily lives. Whereas Linguaskill Business will assess the ability of the candidate in English language in a corporate setting or in a business setting. Now let's just see, we will just do a small recapitulation of what was done in the previous modules, so that you have an idea as to how we will proceed in the next upcoming modules. Let's look at what we have for today. A brief about Linguaskill as an exam. A candidate must know that it is a computer-based test that can be taken anywhere in the world. This test actually tests the proficiency of English language of a candidate, and the candidate is judged or assessed in 4 aspects of the language: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. This language proficiency is assessed on the CEFR scale, which ranges from A1, which is a beginner level, and C2, that's a proficient user. Linguaskill Business helps the employers know about the employee or the candidate's proficiency in the business English. So it is important that whenever the candidate undergoes the test or takes up the tests, he or she has to prepare well for the examination. This is just a recapitulation of all the 3 modules done earlier. This recap will help you understand what was done in the previous module and will help you to proceed further. Now, in the previous modules, we saw that there were 5 tasks in the speaking section. Since this is a speaking module, speaking has 5 tasks a candidate has to complete. Now, earlier, we spoke about what were the 5 tasks in general. It was introduction, read it aloud, speaking on a given topic or speaking for a minute on the visuals, and the task-based communication. We also did the sentence patterns in the earlier modules. The sentence patterns ranges from simple, compound to complex sentences. And it is mandatory to use these sentences when you're giving the speaking examination. Usage of idiomatic expressions is also necessary whenever the candidate appears for an exam. Business vocabulary is must when the candidate answers all the questions in the speaking section. It is not mandatory that the candidate has to use a complete business vocabulary in the sentences, but to get a CEFR score or a higher CEFR score, he or she can use business vocab in the sentences. We also saw that there were a lot of intonations and stress and rhythm that the candidate must put on the sentences while speaking. It is also essential that the candidate focuses on the fluency and the pronunciation of the sentences. Now, the major thing to think about, or the major thing to keep in mind, a point to remember is that the timing for each of the answer is limited, ranging from task 1 to task 5. The timing will be 10 seconds to 1 minute. Candidate gets 10 seconds to answer all the questions and 1 minute for the extended tasks. Now, the candidate has to use, we also saw that the candidate has to use complex grammar structures to get a higher CEFR score. So these were a couple of things that we covered in the previous modules. Now let's look at what do we have for today. In today's session, we have part 4 or task 4, which is speak for a minute on the graphics or visuals. Now let's look at what is the format of the test. Candidate is required to speak for a minute. As mentioned earlier, all the candidates, जितने भी candidates हैं, उनको 1 minute, 1 minute बोलने के लिए, अपना आंसर देने के लिए कहा जाता है. Make sure ये 1 minute के अंदर आप नहीं रुकेंगे. You will not stop exactly before the minute or before the timer goes off. Now 1 minute of preparation time is given in the extended answers or extended section. For example, task 4 and 5. These are the extended speaking sections. So the candidate gets 1 minute of the think and prepare time. The aim of this test is to assess the ability of the candidate to speak for a longer period of time. So that is for a minute. A candidate is judged or assessed whether he or she can speak for a longer period of time, and that too in English. The candidate provides an explanation to all the answers along with the suggestions and recommendations. So in this task, which is part 4, speak for a minute on a graphic or a visual that will be shown, the candidate has to make sure that he or she provides an explanation of the answer along with your recommendations and suggestions. The test takers or the candidates, they are assessed on the various parameters such as fluency, pronunciation, and resources. As mentioned in the earlier topics, I had mentioned that you have to make sure that your fluency, your pronunciation, and the resources that you use, they have to be appropriate, they have to be relevant to the topic. So the test takers, the candidates, are assessed on different levels. Since it is a speaking test, they will be assessed on various things like fluency, pronunciation, or maybe the suggestions or the recommendations that you provide in this part. Now let's look at some of the rules to make the visual description easy. This section, the rules section, will help you, or it will help the candidate provide a clear answer to the question. It will also help the candidate to make sure that the answers are relevant. Now, in this section, you will see a visual or a graphic on the screen. The candidate has to make sure whatever he sees on the screen, on your computer screen, he defines and describes, gives the explanation to the entire visual. Now, what are some of the rules to make sure that your answer is appropriate and according to the visual? Let's look at the first rule. Provide a clear point of view in your answer. Now, whenever a candidate visualizes or sees the visuals on the computer, it is important that you go ahead and state a clear point of view. Clear point of view means you have to state a clear topic sentence. What this point of view does, ये point of view जब आप देते हैं तो ये क्या करता है, आपके आंसर को और भी क्लियर बना देता है. It makes your answer very clear. Now, the next point, give relevant answers and avoid beating around the bush. That is what we also did in the first 3 tasks. आप सभी को relevant answers देना बहुत ज़रूरी है. जैसे कि हमने पहले भी बताया था that your time is limited. When you're giving, when you're speaking, your time is limited. So this is a 1-minute task और एक मिनट में आपको क्या करना है, विजुअल देखना है और विजुअल देख के अपने आंसर्स देने हैं. So when you look at the visual, एक क्लियर पॉइंट आपको स्टेट करना पड़ेगा जिसे आप सपोर्ट करेंगे अपने एग्जाम्पल से या रिकमेंडेशन से. एक उदाहरण के तौर पे आप अपना व्यू पॉइंट रखेंगे. Now give relevant answers because we have very limited time. The next point is make sure it is understandable and it is easy to navigate. When you look at the answers or when you look at the question, when you look at the visuals, it is important that you try to give sentences that are easy to navigate, that is easily understandable. So for example, if I am looking at the visual and when I look at the visual, I have to make sure that I pick up something very important that the visual states. विजुअल कुछ ऐसी चीज़ आपको दिखा रहा है, आपको वो की पॉइंट उठाना है और वो की पॉइंट को लेके आपको अपना आंसर फ्रेम करना है. फॉर दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग यू आर गोइंग टू गेट अ वेरी लिमिटेड टाइम ऑफ से 40 seconds to 1 minute. वो 1 minute के अंदर आप अपना आंसर फ्रेम करेंगे, बट यू कैन ओनली फ्रेम द आंसर वंस यू आर क्लियर अबाउट what you're going to talk about. The candidate can also use conditionals. The candidate can make use of comparisons. And the comparisons can be made with the usage of phrases like more than, better than, as good as. Candidate can also use conditionals in the sentences. Now, ये बहुत ज़रूरी है कि candidate जो है वो conditionals का use और कंपैरिजन का यूज़ अपने आंसर्स में विजुअल डिस्क्रिप्शन में करे. So it is important that the candidate is using conditionals. Now what are conditionals? I'll just give a brief description about conditionals and we'll make sure that you know how to use conditionals in your sentences. Now जैसे कि नाम से ही पता लग रहा है, it is conditional. Conditional means conditions. So there are 4 conditions or conditionals in English grammar that the candidate has to prepare before appearing for any exam. So conditional actually states कोई भी condition जो हम बात करते हैं, जैसे कि हमने if लगा के हम बात कर रहे हैं, हम then लगा के बात कर रहे हैं, like we're using if or then. For example, if it would rain or if it would rain in United States, there would be floods. So if you look at the example, you will see there is a condition stated. Or maybe, the condition is stated in the beginning or at the end of the sentence. So for example, if it rains in United States, there would be floods. Or if I go to United States, let's look at a more simple example. If I go to United States, I will bring chocolates for you. So the sentence says that there is a condition in the beginning. अगर मैं US जाती हूँ, तो मैं आपके लिए चॉकलेट्स लेकर आऊँगी. अगर यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स में बारिश होती है, तो हो सकता है बाढ़ आ जाए. Right? So when you look at the visuals, जब आप कंप्यूटर स्क्रीन पे अपने visuals देखेंगे, if the candidate is looking at the visual and explaining things, it is important that you try to use conditionals wherever necessary, because conditionals actually come in the complex grammar structures. कॉम्प्लेक्स ग्रामर स्ट्रक्चर के अंदर एक कंडीशनल डालना it will help you to go ahead and get a CEFR, higher CEFR score. So conditionals, yes, in English grammar, we have 4 conditionals. First, second, third, and a zero conditional. Zero conditional basically states that there is no if, there is no then, but still it is a condition used in the sentence. Like for example, in normal sentences, if we say, it says, if you heat ice, it melts. यहाँ पर हमने प्रयोग किया है if का. लेकिन what happens is, if we do not use the if sentence, अगर हम if का इस्तेमाल नहीं करते हैं और sentence conditional बनाते हैं, that is when we say that it is a zero conditional. So for example, the same sentence I'm going to translate for you. It says, you heat ice, it melts. So there was no conditional. You can use sentences that are zero conditionals too in your sentences. Let's look at, apart from using conditionals and using complex grammar structures, let's look at the other rules too and see what we have on the screen. Now, every time whenever you use a conditional, as I said, you get a CEFR or a higher CEFR score. In the band description or in the score, I had mentioned that A1 is a beginner level. So when you use simple sentences like the basic sentences, it is very obvious that the candidate might land up somewhere from A1 to B1, which is a beginner level, a beginner CEFR score. So every time when you prepare for the exam, for the Linguaskill exam, it is important that you remind yourself that you use a complex grammar structure to get a higher CEFR score. Now, as I mentioned, what is CEFR score? It is the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages. So there are some descriptors that have been given by the CEFR or by the Cambridge to judge or assess the candidates. Now, to attain a higher score or a higher band or a higher CEFR score, which is of a proficient user, you have to make sure that you're using complex grammar structures along with appropriate grammar sentences or maybe sentence patterns. The fluency should be maintained throughout the examination. So this is a sample example, or I would just say that this is a sample that you see on your screen. The screen has a visual shown on the left. And the visual is marked, or you can say that there are headings written on the visuals. Now, you will get a question as you see on the right of the visual, or maybe at the top of the visual when you actually give the examination, आपको वो topic और वो question visual के ऊपर दिखाई देगा. So that topic or the question should be read carefully by the candidate. Now, whenever you're reading the question, make sure you understand what the visual is all about. जैसे कि आप यहाँ देख रहे हैं कि visual जो आपको दिखाई दे रहा है, उसका एक सीधा word, exactly the same word is written in the question. So let's pick up what the word is and what is the visual all about. I'm sure everyone guessed it right. सभी ने सही guess किया होगा, which is the visual shown on the screen is about rainwater harvesting. Now, what is rainwater harvesting? What it is about, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages, we're going to look at it in detail. Now, whenever you are given a visual on the screen, the candidate is given the visual on the screen, this particular tasks also give you the prompts to answer the question or to frame your answer. Do you see that just after the image or just beside the image, you have the question, and below that question you have all the prompts. So it says, observe the image carefully and explain the process as well as few advantages of the rainwater harvesting. Now, when the candidate reads the question, he has to make sure that he picks up the keywords. Like for example, the keyword here is rainwater harvesting. The image shown here is of a rainwater harvest. Now, if at all you find it difficult to read the visual or you find it difficult to understand the visuals, it is important to read what is given on the visual, to read the names given on the visuals. Now, before we proceed on to explaining what is there in the answer or what is there in the picture given to us, there is just one thing that I would like to mention. Now, in the speaking task in part 4, when a visual is shown to you, this particular visual, it can be a recommendation, it can be an advertisement, it can be a pie chart, it can be anything related to pros and cons of maybe floods in a particular area. It can be a bar graph. So the visual can range from a bar graph to the common visuals. The candidate has to make sure that he answers everything according to the visual shown on the screen. Now here, if we look at the visual, we see that there is no pie chart, there is no graphic, there is no bar graphs, nothing as such. It's a simple picture or a simple image of a rainwater harvesting. Now, how do we go ahead and explain the rainwater harvest? That is what we are going to look at. So the possible answer to the visual. We are going to go back to the visual once again, once we have completed the answer, so that you can relate the answer to the visual. Now, the possible answer to the visual can be, rainwater harvesting is a method to collect the rainwater and save it for different purposes, such as washing clothes and utensils, drinking, or it can even be used for gardening. In the image provided, the rainwater is being collected in the tanks beneath the ground. The water then goes to the borewell and is pumped and filtered to be filled in the overhead tank and supplied as drinking water in the house. Now let's go back to the visual and see whether we have answered all the parts given in the visual. Before we move on to the visual, I would just want to note down all the bullet points that we have mentioned in the answer. We have mentioned that it is a rainwater harvesting method which is shown in the visual. We have also mentioned that this particular rainwater that is collected is used in washing clothes and utensils, which is an advantage that you have mentioned in the answer. We have also stated that where the water is being collected, which is in the tanks beneath the ground. And we have also mentioned that this water is pumped and filtered and supplied as drinking water. So let's go back to the visual and see whether we have answered all the question, all the things, all the prompts in the given visual and the question. So it says, image shown is of water harvesting. Yes, we have observed that and we have stated that in our answer. It says, observe the image carefully and explain the process of rainwater harvesting. Yes, we have explained the process, not just mentioned that this is rainwater harvesting, but we have explained the process of rainwater harvest. Also, we have mentioned few advantages of rainwater harvesting. So when we say that the rainwater gets collected in the tanks below the ground or beneath the ground, that water is collected and used in washing and cleaning purposes. And then we have also mentioned how it is used in or for drinking purpose. So that actually makes the answer complete. However, if we look at the sample answer once again, we have not mentioned how the rainwater is getting collected, or there's no process of showing how the water is being collected. We have just mentioned that it is a process, it is a method, simple, in a very simple sentence, that it is a process of collecting the rainwater anywhere, and use it for different purposes. So in short, the purpose of explaining what is rainwater harvesting is solved, and the advantages that we have mentioned in the answer has been solved. Let's look at what do we have next. So there are some important grammar topics that we are going to cover, or we are going to talk about, which will help the candidate prepare for Linguaskill Part 4, which is looking at the visuals and answering the questions. So obviously the candidate gets 1 minute to prepare, think and prepare, and the candidate gets 1 minute to speak the answer. So what are some of the grammar things that the candidate has to keep in mind? The first point says that the candidate must prepare speaking more grammar or complex grammar structures. Now, when we talk about grammar structures, in the previous modules, we touched upon several patterns in the sentences. So there was this simple pattern. First, we had the simple pattern, basic pattern. Second, we had the compound pattern. Third, we had the compound and complex pattern to be used. And last but not the least, we had the complex patterns, compound and complex. So these are the 4 complex grammar structures that the candidate is expected to use when he's speaking. Now, in this 1 minute task, in the earlier module, we saw that there was a task given to the candidate without a visual, and he had to speak for a minute on the topic. So when you want to speak for a minute continuously, when the candidate wants to speak, or the candidate has to speak for a minute constantly, he has to keep in mind that he's using mix of all the structures or all the speaking patterns. Because if a candidate uses simple or basic structures, he or she can lose or get a lower score on a CEFR scale. Let's look at the second important grammar topic that is supposed to be prepared before you appear for the examination. It is important to be well versed with the grammar topics like prepositions, conjunctions, and articles. Now, why do we say that prepositions, conjunctions, and articles have to be studied? Prepositions, articles, or conjunctions, they're very small words. They're very small words that can change the meaning of the entire sentence if they are wrongly placed. For example, I'll give you a basic example. If you say, I'm sitting on a chair, you would just say that you're sitting on the chair. The word on, which is a preposition, actually helps you to understand or tell the other person that yes, आप कुर्सी के ऊपर बैठे हैं. Now, the same word, if I replace it and I say, I'm sitting under the chair. Sentence पूरा सही है. Sentence बिल्कुल भी हमने नहीं बदला. We did not change the sentence. But, did you see that just one word on was replaced with under, and the meaning was changed? The complete sentence got changed. So make sure that whenever you give the test or you apply for the test, you appear for the examination, Linguaskill exam, always study or prepare for these small topics like prepositions, conjunctions, and articles. Prepositions such as by, in, for, to, towards. These are some commonly used prepositions that you should prepare or you should know exactly where to use them. Second, the use of conjunctions. Now, why I say that the candidate has to prepare these small topics? There is a reason. As I said, the prepositions, if wrongly placed, can change the meaning of the sentence. अगर आप preposition कहीं पर गलत place करते हैं, तो वो sentence का मतलब बदल देता है. लेकिन अगर आप conjunctions गलत place करेंगे, तो sentence जो आप जोड़ रहे हैं, conjunctions are used for joining the sentences. So जो sentences आप जोड़ेंगे, those sentences will not be linked properly. Now, for example, I'll give you a basic example to understand this. If I say, I'm working on a project and my team is helping me with it. The usage of and, अगर and का usage देखें, तो वो दो sentences को जोड़ रहा है. It is combining or joining the two sentences. So when you use conjunctions, inappropriately or maybe wrongly, when you use the conjunctions or place the conjunctions wrongly in the sentence, what can happen is, let's look at that. In the same sentence, we are going to see, we'll just remove the and replace and with because. Let's see whether the word that we are using in place of and changes the meaning or is it completely wrong in the sentence. I'm working on a project because my team is working or helping me. I'm working on a project because my team is helping me. Do you think that sounds correct? So if I use I am working on a project and my team is helping me. Or if I say I'm working on a project but my team is helping me. I think the usage of and but is more appropriate than because. वो क्यों हुआ? क्योंकि and but एक ऐसे conjunction है जो sentences को सिर्फ जोड़ते हैं. Sentences अपने आप में independent होते हैं. So for example, जो sentence हमने example के तौर पे अभी लिया, I am working on a project. Did you see that the sentence is standing separately and independently? And the next sentence after and, which is my team is helping with it, is standing independently. They are just joined together with the help of and. However, and but, they are appropriate. And if you look at because is a conjunction that allows the candidate to give reasons or maybe to support something. Like for example, if I say, I did not attend the meeting yesterday because I was not well. So it is just to support what you just said. You did not attend the meeting. Why didn't you attend the meeting? Is you're supporting the answer using because. You're giving a reason in the answer. So it says, because I was not well. Now, it's not necessary that the candidate has to use conjunctions in the middle of the sentences. The candidate, if at all, is a proficient user of the language, he or she can use these conjunctions in the beginning too. So instead of saying, I did not attend the meeting yesterday because I was not well, I can also say, because I was not well, I did not attend the meeting. So if you look at the sentence, I experimented with the sentence and I brought the second sentence to the first part. And I shifted the first part to the later part. So if the candidate is well versed with prepositions, conjunctions, he or she will be able to form the answers in a fluent way, and he or she would be able to maintain that fluency in the answers. Now let's look at what is the next grammar topic we have. It says the candidate will have to explain the visual. To explain the visual, it is important that the candidate uses a transition in the sentence. Now, how do you take transitions in the sentence? In the sentence, when you talk about transitions, जब हम transition की बात करते हैं, तो transition का मतलब होता है एक sentence से दूसरे sentence पे जाना is what is called transition. So, when you talk about transition in the sentences, एक minute में जब आप बात करते हैं, 1 minute, you have to speak constantly or continuously for 1 minute. You have to move from one sentence to the other sentence. Now, when you talk about movement, the sentences cannot stand independently. Obviously, the sentences would be independent in some way. However, moving from one sentence to the other fluently in a flow is also required. Now, to move from one sentence to the other sentence fluently and with a flow, it is important that the candidate uses appropriate adverbs. So, he or she has to prepare exactly how to use the adverbs in the sentences. Now, what are adverbs? I think we also touched this aspect or topic in the previous modules. Now, just to give a brief introduction about what adverbs are. Adverbs basically are the qualities that you assign to any verb, any action, or any adjective or a quality. Now, how to recognize whether a word is an adverb or not? The simple way to recognize is that it is going to help you answer, or maybe it is, let's look at the first easiest way how you can pick up if it is an adverb or not. So the word will have ly towards the end. So whenever the word is ending with ly, it is an adverb. However, there are few words that do not end with ly, but they are still adverbs. However, there are a couple of questions you can ask to yourself whether, just to judge or just to pick out whether this is an adverb or not. Now, for example, if I say, I will see you tomorrow for the meeting, or I will see you tomorrow. Now, tomorrow is an adverb. There is no ly added to it. There's no ly. Do you see that? Usually, we use adverbs or the words that have ly at the end. We know that they're adverbs. But tomorrow, today, words like tomorrow, today, yesterday, they're not adverbs, but they still add meaning to the sentence. They do not have ly towards the end. They are still adverbs. They are adding meaning to the sentence. And how you can recognize them is you can ask questions like when, which, where. So if I said, I will see you for the meeting tomorrow, when will I see you, or when will I meet you? It shows that the answer is tomorrow. Tomorrow is an adverb. Let's look at what are some of the other things that a candidate has to prepare before he appears for an examination. Now again, it says, conditionals, preparing for conditionals is an added advantage. I would not say that it is mandatory to use conditionals everywhere in the visuals. Visuals, when they are shown to you, they can be a range of visuals that are shown. For example, as I said, you would be shown a bar graph. You can be shown, or the candidate can be shown a picture or an image like we just saw about the rainwater harvesting. There can be a picture that shows the sales of maybe jackets, or maybe the winter clothes and the summer clothes. There can be visuals related to pie charts. Now, since there is a variety of visuals that can be shown to a candidate, please be rest assured that all the visuals will be business related. As we mentioned earlier in the module, that Linguaskill examination is divided into two options: Linguaskill General and Linguaskill Business. In the business module, all the setting, all the visuals shown to you, everything that would be asked to you in business exam would be related to business or the corporates. Now, in a business setting or in this environment or maybe the corporate setting, it is important that we use words that are business related. So even if we explain the visual, we have to make sure that the words that we use in the visual, in the answer, to explain the visuals should be business related. There is no rule in the exam as to how many words you should use in the answer, the business related words you should use in the answer, but it is just a simple process that wherever you think it is necessary to use business related vocabulary, you can use it. Now, as we looked at the example for rainwater harvesting and the advantages, we know that the visual is related to rainwater harvest. Now, there are very few or very less words, business related words that we can use. Or maybe it would not be used. However, in this particular examination or in this task, it is important for every candidate to make sure that whenever you look at the visual, the first thing that you have to do is to prepare your answer accordingly. To pick up the key point, to pick up what is shown in the visual, and then support the answer with the necessary points given in the prompts. Prompts are a way to show the candidates that yes, you have to be restricted, you have to talk or you have to be restricted to the topic. You should not go and move away from the topics. Because as we said, the time is limited. There's only 1 minute that the candidate gets to answer the question. Also, whenever you prepare for the test, जब आप टेस्ट के लिए प्रिपेयर करते हैं तो ये बहुत ज़रूरी होता है कि आप टेस्ट देते समय या प्रिपेयर करते समय अपने आप को टाइम्ड रखें. समय को नोट डाउन करना बहुत ज़रूरी है. Because if you do not note down the timings, if you don't note down how much time did you take to speak few sentences, it is possible that when you're going to speak in the examination, you may miss out few things. Or you may miss the timer. Timer would just go off. Also, as we looked at in the earlier modules, timer plays an important role in whatever answers you give. The timer would range from 10 seconds to 1 minute. Reading task 4 or the speaking task 4 is all about speaking on the visual. Earlier we said that there will not be any visual that will be shown to the candidate in the previous module, and the candidate still has to speak for 1 minute. Similarly, in this task, which is the task 4, the candidate will just look at the visual and answer all the questions given in the prompts. The important thing or the key points to remember is that whenever the candidates look at the visual, you have to pick the key point on what you're going to talk about. What do you see in the image? Second, you have to make sure that all the points given in the prompt or given in the question is covered. So if you miss, now it's not about, even if you miss certain things in the prompt, like even if you miss 1 or 2 things in the prompt, you will not be penalized or you will not be marked negatively. However, we recommend the candidates to complete the speaking or to complete all the points given in the prompt within the given time. In this task 4 of the speaking section, we learnt about how to answer all the visuals. We also learnt about the grammar topics that the candidates have to prepare for in order to answer these questions, in order to answer or frame an answer in the question. Now, small little topics such as we spoke about conjunctions, we spoke about prepositions, we spoke about adverbs and conditionals have to be kept in mind when the candidate is answering the question. The visual task is a little difficult task because the candidate has to assess or has to see the complete visual in just a minute, analyze the visual, and then explain the visuals. So we say that it is a little bit challenging task for the candidate. A little challenging. Why? Because in just a minute, he has to prepare the answer. He also has to prepare the answer according to keeping in mind the grammar rules. And he has to make sure that all the prompts in the question are answered. So the candidate, whenever he appears for the tests or whenever he appears for the Linguaskill speaking exam, it is important that he looks at all the aspects before he answers or appears for the exam. All the grammar topics have to be kept in mind. Also, make sure that the timer is never missed. Keep yourself timed before you appear for the test. The timings play an important role because most of the times, if you have not finished explaining the visual, reading task 4 is all about visual explanation. So if you miss out on any points and the major or the main points are missed while speaking, you may get a lower CEFR score, or the candidate may land up in a lower score. So it is important to please remember that there is a complete answer, or you form the answer completely looking at the key points in the question. And also you form the answer looking at the visual. I know it is a little bit challenging. However, if you keep in mind all the general instructions and tips, I'm sure you will ace the examination. For this task 4, that was it from my end. However, I would request the candidates to go through the module once again, the previous modules as well as through the module that we have discussed today, so that you have an idea as to how you're going to form your answers before you appear for the test. In the next upcoming modules, we are going to look at the integrated speaking module, which is integrated in the sense that we are going to combine everything. We are going to combine all the questions, practice all the questions of the speaking module in the integrated exercises or through an integrated exercises. We will also look at the different sections, the different questions that are asked in the different sections in speaking module. This will give you an idea of answering all the frequently asked questions. However, please be prepared. The candidate has to be prepared for some random questions too. For this, it is important that you prepare and practice every day. Practicing and preparing yourself for the examination is the key to ace any exam. That's all from my side for reading task 4. Thank you.